Welcome to the first of many campus safety telecourses. This telecourse was originally designed with different ideas for what the concerns were on college campuses. The first one that we're going to do is going to be on active shooter. With regards to this telecourse, we are going to go through a lot of information, but prior to that, we're going to show a video that's produced by the FBI. It's very, very good, called Run, Hide, Fight. This video will give you a great visual of what to do if an active shooter enters the work or school environment.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important: you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
We've seen the video, and that gave you a great visual of what to do if an active shooter were to enter your work or school environment. But let's talk about a little history. We're all aware of some of the major active shooter events that have occurred in recent history. Virginia Tech, Columbine High School, and Sandy Hook. All were tragedies. But let's talk about this year. Just this semester alone, we've had several incidents that we'll cover just very quickly. On August 26th, 2 people were shot on the campus of Texas University. On August 27th, the very next day, at Savannah State University, a student was shot and killed. On September 3rd, 1 student was shot to death and 2 were injured in the faculty parking lot of the Sacramento City College, which is a community college a lot like ours. All of these were tremendous tragedies, and all of these caused people to wonder, what should I do? So we're going to cover what to do. We're going to cover what you expect. We're going to cover what to expect from law enforcement when they arrive. And we're also going to talk about survival mindset. But before we get to all that, let's talk about an active shooter. What is an active shooter? An active shooter is an individual engaged in the killing and attempted to kill people in a confined or populated area. What does that mean? It means that active shooters are serious and they have a strong desire to kill. In most cases, they use firearms, sometimes one, sometimes many. And there are some cases where the shooters have intended victims. Most of the time they're random and they'll take targets of opportunity. That's why we need to ensure that you have a plan, because when this person comes in, they're looking for targets of opportunity. When you're dealing with these active shooters, most of these shooters will not stop until stopped by law enforcement, or in some cases, unfortunately, they commit suicide. These are why these are such extreme situations. And anytime you're dealing with an active shooter, it's a very, very serious type of situation. So let's talk about survival mindset. This is a very important aspect of the active shooter and going to school or public places in modern times. There are 3 things I want you to concern yourself with: awareness, preparation, and rehearsal. Let's talk about awareness. Awareness will be the first thing that's most important to you, the student, or the faculty, or the employee. In your work environments and around campus, you need to gain a basic understanding of your situation. Take a look around. Look for exits. Look for ways out of environments. Look at your classroom. Look for the doors. Look for where you can hide. Look for places that you can go to cover. So if we're in the cafe, or we're in the LRC, or we're in the library, know where your exits are at all time. For the teachers, look around at your work environment. Look for things to barricade doors. Look through the lens of survival. So I want you to look at your situation and your workspace as, how can I survive here? What can I do to either get out or barricade myself or survive this type of situation? In your mind, you need to develop sort of a what if. What if this were to happen? What if someone came through the door? What am I going to do? And we're going to try and cover a lot of that, so we'll help with that. Developing that type of survivor's mindset will protect yourself emotionally and mentally if this ever happens. All right, We've covered awareness, so let's talk about rehearsal. Two things you want to do: mentally rehearse and physically rehearse. So you want to have a plan, and when you get a plan, you want to practice that plan. Even when nothing's going on, practice, because when you practice and you induce stress into a real situation, you'll revert back to what you practiced and you'll most likely carry it out. So when doing that, you've already created a survival mindset. Rehearsing is really critical. Rehearse and almost imagine, where would I go if something happened right now? Would I go out one door? Would I go out another door? Is there a window? Can I barricade myself? What can I do? So that's rehearsal. Now let's talk about course of action. What can I physically do? What action should I take? First thing, get out. If there's a path to get out, get out. Move quickly. Don't wait for others to validate your decision. One student typically will hear gunshots, and you'll have several other students going, well, are you sure? Are you positive? Don't wait for that. If you're sure, go and try and take others with you. That's really important. If you can't get out, secure the immediate area and hide out. Barricade your classroom doors if they don't lock. MSJC just came up with a sort of a temporary magnet-style device to help lock the doors. If you can't get to that, then let's barricade the doors and use whatever's available: desks, file cabinets, books, any type of furniture. Now, let's say the worst case scenario, the shooter enters the room. Barricade the door behind him. Don't let that shooter get out. If there's 2 or more students, don't huddle together. If you huddle together, you make one target and you give the shooter one thing to shoot at, as opposed to separating and making the shooter look at several different targets as opposed to one. And as a very last resort, and it is a last resort, attack. Attack the shooter with whatever you have. Book bags, chairs, tables, whatever you can get to stop this shooter from killing you. Nobody wants to just lay there and be a victim. So if as a last resort, fight, 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 fight. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about course of action. When you're inside the room and you have an active shooter in the school facility, close the blinds, block the windows, turn off TV and radio, dim or face computer monitors away so that the appearance is that no one's in the classroom. Most importantly, we all have cell phones. Put your cell phone on vibrate. We're not saying turn it off. You need it for communication, but make sure that it's on vibrate, because the last thing you want is the shooters passing by the classroom is your phone to go off, indicating that there's someone in that classroom, and that's going to direct the shooter to you. Okay? Keep everyone calm and quiet. Hard to do. Do your best to try and get people to calm. Talk to each other. Buddy up, but don't huddle. Try and convince each other to stay quiet. If someone's panicking, try and talk to that person. Get them to remain calm and explain why you want them to remain calm, so that hopefully the shooter will pass by. Stay low. Keep your profile. Remember, if you're standing straight up, you're a big target. If you crouch down and stay low, you're a little target. Remember that any type of firearm requires aiming. And if you're moving or low and you're not presenting yourself as a big stationary target, you're making it more difficult for a shooter to shoot you. You have to assume and always understand that the intentions of the shooter are lethal. Researching these active shooters, they are very, very, very desirable for body counts. They want to kill you. You have to understand that. Develop a survival mindset, and you need to do whatever it takes to survive. That is the difference in life and death, and that's what you do when your life is on the line. Okay, so let's break this down a little further. Let's talk about your response. We know that the shooter won't stop until his objectives have been met, and most of the time his objectives are body counts. So, knowing that, we need to do a couple of things. Consider the risk of exposure by opening doors. Take a look. Make sure that you stay in place. If you can visually see the shooter, remain where you're at. If you can't see the shooter and you believe you can get out, get out. If the shooter bangs on the door and yells for help to entice you to open, if you don't recognize the person, assume that's the shooter. Most of you on campus know each other, or at least are familiar. If you don't recognize the person banging on the door, just keep in your mind that it very well possible could be the shooter trying to trick you or fool you. If you do believe it's a student, by all means let them in. But if you're not sure, you may want to have that person move on. During the Virginia Tech shootings, for example, People who did take refuge in locked rooms were frightened by the gunfire, but all of them survived because they did take cover in a locked room and the shooter wasn't able to gain entry. Okay, so we've covered a lot, but let's talk about what to report. We all have cell phones, faculty, staff, and students, and I know we said silence them, but we definitely want you to use them. So let's cover what to report. The first thing I need you to report is where you're at. Are you in the 900 building, the 800 building? Are you in the LRC? Are you in the cafe? Are you in the libraries? Real important that we know your exact location. And now let's talk about how many people are there. And you don't have to be exact. We just want a general idea. Are there 50? Are there 30? Are there 20? Are there just 5 of you? Or maybe just 2 of you? That's really important that we know the numbers. Now, let's get to some critical stuff. Who's injured and how many people? And what type of injuries? So we need to know that so we can assess our secondary response and our medical response. Are there people critically hurt? Are there people just bumps and bruises? It's really important that we know what type of injuries that you have and how many people are hurt, because we as law enforcement need to assess whether we need to go there immediately or can we move on and go to more serious injuries. Okay, so we've covered that. Now let's talk about the shooter themselves. What do we want from you for there? First thing, location. We want to know exactly where that shooter is. Do you see them? Have they walked away? How long ago did they walk away? Are they approaching you? We really want to know, as exact as you can, where this person is. Now let's talk about physical description. What race is the shooter? Gender? How about approximate age? Don't need to be specific. Are they a student age, which ranges at the college level from 20 to 50? So try and give us if they're closer to 50, closer to 20, or maybe they're 35 or 30 right in the middle. Really important that we have a general idea of who we're looking for. Then we'll go to physical features. How tall are they? How much do they weigh? And you can even be as simple as, are they fat? Are they thin? Are they tall? Are they short? Do they have a mustache? Do they have a beard? Are they wearing glasses? Do they have hair? Are they bald? Do they have a mohawk? These are specifics that help us identify that shooter quickly, and even more importantly, if somebody else picked up the gun by mistake, we want to be able to differentiate as quickly as we can so we don't have an accidental tragedy go on. Now, to the best of your ability, let's talk about types of weapons. Not everybody knows handguns or rifles. Most people don't even know what they are outside of folks that shoot on a regular basis. But if you can give us a general idea, is it a handgun, which means that it fits in someone's hand, and it can be chrome or black, or it could be even with a brown handle, it could be a revolver or semi-automatic. If you can just tell us a handgun versus a rifle, which would be a longer weapon that would be shoulder fired, that's really helpful to us because then we understand what type of firepower the shooter has. Do they have a backpack? Do they have ammunition bags? Are they wearing a vest like police would wear? Do they have some type of bulletproof vest on? Do you recognize the shooter? Is it a former student? Is it a classmate? What's the shooter's name? Have you heard any explosions outside of gunshots? And if you have heard gunshots, when was the last gunshot? And where did you hear it from? So, we've covered what to report, and we've gotten that out. Now law enforcement's on the way. So now let's talk about what to do if you're in a confined space, especially if you have classmates who have become injured. First thing you want to do is treat the injured. You have to remember that in a shooting type situation, the injuries could be very severe and people can bleed out very quickly. They can also go into shock just from the mere stress and trauma of dealing with this type of situation. Now, add blood loss to that and you can lose someone really, really quickly. So, none of us have to be paramedics or doctors to understand what to do. But if we can get a basic premise of applying pressure. Now, I know MSJC is working on go bags for each of the classrooms, and that'll be for the faculty, and there'll be basic first aid supplies in there. That should be very helpful to help with some of these type of situations where we need to apply pressure to a bleeding wound and get it to stop. And treat for shock. And the way you do that without being a medical professional is to calm people down. Make them as calm as possible. Let them understand that help is on the way, and they are going to make it through. So be a cheerleader for that injured person. Help them through the event. Okay, so we've covered that. Now let's talk about law enforcement. What is law enforcement going to do? What is law enforcement's objective? Well, the first thing is to immediately respond to the area. So what you're going to hear before you see will be numerous sirens coming your way. That is law enforcement on their way to come and help. But here's what you have to remember. When they get there, our primary goal is to locate, contain, and neutralize the shooter. That's our primary goal. So we may pass some of you, even though some of you are injured. You may see the initial group of officers passing. They're passing to stop that shooter. Now, a couple things we know. The safest place for you is inside of a classroom that's secure. We know that the shooter will not flee merely because law enforcement is present. They have a tendency to either shoot it out or commit suicide. And that's just based on all the events that we've had. Remember, the goal of the shooter is to kill and injure as many people as they can. So, as law enforcement is moving through that hallway and through that building, at some point they're going to enter your classroom. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when law enforcement enters the classroom, do not present a threat to them. You're going to want to jump up. You're going to want to run to them. Don't do that. Wait for instructions from the officers as they're entering the room. Remember the objective of law enforcement. We're clearing classrooms to locate that shooter and neutralize that shooter. So let's review them again real quick. Don't make any sudden movements. Don't scream, because if you're screaming at us in law enforcement, we have a hard time communicating with each other and trying to discuss if the room is safe or unsafe. So be real careful with that. And certainly, if you find a weapon, if the shooter dropped one, do not point it out, pick it up, just leave it alone. If you happen to find it, though, one of the things you can do is cover it up with a trash can so that it's not readily seen and available. And when the officers are coming by and you have the opportunity, then notify the officer that the shooter did drop a weapon and it's under this trash can in the classroom. It's a great idea to do without picking it up or pointing it, or even pointing with your fingers. You don't want the officers confused at all as to what they're seeing as they enter the classroom. So that covers the classroom. Now let's talk about a little bit about evacuations. We in law enforcement, once we've cleared a building, will establish safety corridors to safely evacuate you from your classrooms or from the common areas or from public buildings that you're in. You absolutely will most likely have weapons pointed at you. Please don't be upset by that. You need to understand the seriousness of active shooter and the mindset of the officers coming in to safely get you out of there. You will most likely be instructed to keep your hands above your head. We understand you're not the shooter. We know you're a student and a teacher. But until we confirm who that shooter is, we have to treat everyone as if they're a threat until we know they're not. It is possible that you'll be searched and handcuffed. Not always, but it does occur. If that occurs, please don't be upset by that. Understand that we're trying to get everyone out and everyone safe and treat the injured as quickly as possible. And sometimes we do have to do things like that. So try not to be offended by it. And I understand that most people don't enjoy being handcuffed. Remember your goals. For injured people, that's primary. We need to get to them first. Right after we clear and secure that building, we are going to start going after the injured, and that's on a secondary. Now, on a primary survey, like I was saying before, we are going to go by injured students and injured faculty. And I understand that there's a desire of why did they go by? Remember, the shooter's still shooting. Other people are being killed. We need to get to that shooter and stop him. Once we do that and we contain it, we're going to come to your classrooms, we're going to get you out safely, and we're going to take care of you. So that gives you a good idea of what to expect from law enforcement. So we've covered what we want you to do, first what to expect in a situation, a survival mindset, what we want you to do, how to prepare, how to treat for injured, what to expect from law enforcement, and then evacuation. But let's summarize some of these. Although we see them in the media, shootings at universities are actually rare events. On the average, about 16 per year across 4,000 institutions. We cannot predict where the next shooting will occur. We can't predict who the next shooter is going to be. Unfortunately, sometimes these folks don't leave any warning signs, and sometimes they do. And that goes back to my original point of if you see something, say something. A large number of these shooters have left some type of social media message telling folks what they were going to do. And as unfortunate as that sounds, it always comes out after the fact. So here at MSJC, let's get a little ahead of the curve. If we see something like that, or you're a student and you see a social media post that indicates that maybe someone's thinking about something like that, let's get that reported to your campus safety office or myself or the other deputies who are in partnership with MSJC making this campus safe. So in closing, as a final summary, please understand, here at MSJC, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, campus safety, risk management, administration at MSJC are all working as a team to keep this campus and keep you as safe as possible. Please understand that college campuses are very safe by nature, and although these active shooting incidents seem to dominate the news, they are still fairly rare. Now together, we will keep this campus as safe as possible. We need you as faculty and you as students to report what you're seeing. And I want to close with one thing. If you look back at some of the active shooter events that have gone on in the last 10 years, a majority of them, the shooter themselves put something on social media the day before they decided to commit these horrendous acts. So please, for all of my social media generation people, which is not me because I'm a little older, but for you folks, if you see something unusual, let's all commit to MSJC and say, if I see something unusual, I'm going to call campus safety or the Sheriff's Department immediately. Even if you think maybe the person didn't mean it, let us check it out. Okay, so this is the first of our telecourses. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. Let's all stay safe and have a great year. If you have any questions at all, you can email me at cwaters@msjc.edu, and I'll be more than happy to answer any question you have. Thank you for listening.